Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me. I'm Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com. It's in the description below. Your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any of our platforms. Please reach out to me directly. I am Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for pricing. Today we are discussing the latest generation Breitling Navitimer B01 Chronograph 43. This is really the heart and the soul of the modern Navitimer collection. If JLC's classic watch is the Reverso, Rolex's is the Submariner, and Omega's is the Speedmaster Professional Moonwatch, the Navitimer is the beating heart of Breitling. Dating back to 1952 or 1954, depending on who you believe, it is a long-running chronograph that features a circular slide rule, which is a calculator, a timepiece destined in its initial iterations for pilots. In the modern era, it's a watch for those who fly and those who love the romance of flight. So, in stainless steel, 43 millimeters in diameter, 13.9 millimeters thick from lug tip to lug tip. The watch measures actually fairly reasonable, 48.8 millimeters, and if we include the end links of the bracelet, it's only a little bit broader at 49.7 with a 22 millimeter spacing between the lug and again 13.4 millimeters. You're going to see how that thickness and how this size plays on my wrist. When Georges Kern took over Breitling in mid-2017, he made announcements about ergonomics being a goal, how lugs would be shorter and smaller and watches would wear more compact than they did during the Schneider era. And you can see that's the case, as these lugs are nowhere near the edge of my 16 centimeter circumference wrist. You can see that even from over the top when I'm pulling the strap or the bracelet very tight. It makes the watch look broader from this angle. And so the watch fits with the lugs inboard of the edge of my wrist, even from this exaggerating angle. The real, honest perspective is this one, where you can see just how far inboard of the edge of my wrist those lugs are. And the watch is getting thinner here. It's not thin, and it does have a little bit of an outcropping to the bezel, but it'll fit underneath most sleeves and just about all jacket cuffs. Now, Georges Kern also made another change as part of the transfer of the guard at Breitling, which was to improve bracelet and clasp quality. And while the focus is often on the watches, this is more important to me because for a long time during the 2000s, the 90s, even the 2010s, Breitling often featured bracelets that seemed behind the times, especially where clasps were concerned. Here we have the Breitling Navitimer 7-link bracelet. That's the style. It has a conforming end link to mate it with the case, satin finished links, polished links, staggered link alignment. You can see we have several removable links on each side of the clasp that are fixed in place by screws. The outer face of the links are satinated. Now here you can see the quality of the clasp improving. A lot of Breitling watches just featured a cheap stamped metal clasp with an equally cheap stamped clamshell. Here we have a double deployant action with twin trigger release and an internal profile that makes this feel like a bespoke part and not something bought off the shelf as in the past. The twin trigger release gives a lot more security when closed, and then you have this double folding action which makes the clasp more agreeable with a small wrist and less likely to pinch it. It also feels good as all the components have tight tolerances, and I really appreciate that. The case is designed to pay homage to history, as we have a bevel on the lug profile, but the lugs are squared off. The case band is thin and satinated with lugs integrated into the case band, very similar to how it would have been even back in the 50s. No guard profile around the crown or pushers, vintage-inspired, polished and satinated pump pushers, push-down crown. The watch is water-resistant to 30 meters. We have the bezel, famous for its circular slide rule. For the most part, with the scales you have here, this is for multiplication and division, and it's not all that hard to do. So let's say I want to divide 90 by 45, easy to do. Just like a fraction, you put the number to be divided over the number that is dividing it. So I put 90 over 45, then I go to the index, which is this 10 on the inner scale, and I can see 2. Now let's say I want to multiply 25 by 4. Well, what I do now is I put 25 over the index. It almost works in reverse, so 25 over the index, find 4 on the inner scale. You need to keep your decimals in mind. So you can see 25 times 4 is 100. That's what that means, 10. For our purposes, 10 is 100. And then we do have little notes regarding nautical miles, kilometers, things that can ease your calculation of rate of drift, climb, ground speed, or fuel consumption. That's what that's all for. So it is a multiplication and division tool. And of course, the idea being originally that this watch would have been for pilots, which is why we have the historic AOPA, Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, wings and shield over the center. On the original Navitimers, which were retailed through AOPA literature, you would have had AOPA on that little crossbar at the center of this shield. Here, Breitling's brought as much back as it can without risking copyright infringement. Now we have an upscale dial with applied rhodium-plated steel indices. It looks good. It's a tone-on-tone dial with a reverse panda look. Breitling wants you to think in-house caliber when you see tone-on-tone dials on chronographs today. That's what we have here with the B01. There's enough luminescence. You can't use the other functions of the watch, but you can tell the time. We have little sunken, dished registers for chronograph minutes, chronograph hours, and running seconds. Pull the crown out. You do have a hacking or stop seconds function. There's also a quick set, so you can rapidly and easily cycle the date down at 6 o'clock. Now this B01 chronograph uses a column wheel for function selection, and you can see it through the case back. It is a good looking movement, this B01. There's the column wheel. The sound and the feel among the best in the business, and I mean that sincerely. I rank it with Rolex and Longa as one of the finest feeling chronographs I've experienced. Because the B01 uses a vertical clutch, there's no jump, stagger, or leap to the seconds hand when you start it, and it always resets perfectly to the index up at 60. That's the advantage of a vertical clutch. It is a seamless engagement. And because there's no additional wear and tear with a vertical clutch, if you just want to leave your chronograph running full time, and some people do, you can easily do that without risking the watch thanks to the vertical clutch. The B01 movement came out in 2009 on the Chronomat series, and it was not intended to be seen. Fortunately, it's a fairly large and good-looking movement, so in the era of Georges Kern, the watches have display casebacks, and the movement is worthy of that. Automatic winding with a 70-hour power reserve, 47 joules, and a 4 Hz beat rate. This movement is also a 5-position adjusted COSC certified Swiss chronometer, and you can see the use, at least partially, of Edicron for fine adjustment and beat error correction of the movement, something I always like to see because Edicron is an excellent system that makes for fantastic regulation. Lots to love here. Again, a good-looking automatic chronograph. Not every automatic chronograph is good looking. Reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.